Awesome.
And then I'll just do some shares and stuff like that across. I'll tag you in it and stuff.
Amazing.
All right, I think we are live. So hi everybody, welcome to the What's On at Elephant and Castle Facebook page. It's just me and Dan Willis today. And the reason is that Melissa just kind of had this calling to make it a guy thing, which is something, Dan, that's been a bit of a theme going on for me and my learnings over the last few months about you know, masculinity and what it's like to be a man today, and knowing what you've been through and what I've been through. So we just thought we could have just this nice little honest chat, you know, about you and me and our journeys, and also a little bit about what you're doing, and also Tender is the New Tough, which is kind of us being able to kind of create safe spaces for men to be able to chat. So that's why Melissa is sitting at home watching this while I'm in our office space, you know, doing this. It's a really cool space too. So I'm really stoked about doing it here, and just so that we can have a chat. So first of all, how are you doing, man? I haven't talked to you in a little while.
I'm good. Really, you know, I'd like to say lockdown's been quite kind to me. As you know, like, I'm always on the road with work, and what lockdowns forced me to do is slow down, be able to spend some time with my family, with my wife and my two boys, and really try and nurture that time. And so even though, yeah, obviously families being families, we've been, you know, climbing up the walls and, you know, at each other's throats at times, you know, but it's been an incredible experience that, you know, that I feel really fortunate to have gone through, even though really understand what a lot of people have also gone through. But I've taken the bull by the horns and really love the time that I've spent with my boys.
What's that look like for you, taking the bull by the horns, over the last 6 months, us kind of going through what we've been through and everyone going through the same thing? But yeah, I'm kind of interested to know what taking the bull by the horns means.
Well, so for myself, so my income's really sort of dried up over the past sort of 6 months, and I suppose, so fortunately my wife is in a really stable job. I work for myself, growing a business, but we're at that stage of growth where, you know, we've had to pause a little bit during lockdown, and a lot of things have been going through sort of the admin and, you know, things like that. But taking the bull by the horns is really, it's a note to the stigma that I was going through to begin with, around the fact that I felt not worthy in a way. You know, we talk about masculinity and that side of stuff, and I felt not worthy in a way because I wasn't bringing home the bacon, and you know, I felt sort of not like a second class citizen, but, you know, I was at home, I was stuck at home to begin with, and I was forced to be at home and all these, and then I was looking around me and going, actually, wait a minute, you know, this is actually really positive. You know, I've got this time that I'm never going to get again, to be able to spend some real time, to be able to nurture my kids' brains, you know, and to really help them sort of grow and be themselves. So and then, you know, fortunately my wife was on furlough, you know, for a while, so, you know, we just had that great time. So we really took it, you know, the bull by the horns. We really went heavy into home learning, you know, going out and about, seeing nature, you know, and just really just being a unit, and that's when we're at our best.
What did it feel for you? You know, you said not being able to bring home the bacon. What were the first initial? What was your body feeling when that happened? How did you feel in your body?
I suppose the easiest way to say it is that you feel worthless in a way, you know, and you know, your body just feels heavy, and, you know, it's very similar to, and I've spoken about this before with yourself and on this platform, about how I live with bipolar disorder, and that feeling of sort of worthlessness is similar to how I would describe depression in a way. So there's certain aspects of it. It wasn't depression. It was just, me having to deal with that, if you know what I mean, that moment, and just going, oh, wait a minute, actually, this is a real opportunity.
Where did you like learn these things about a man having to bring home the bacon? Like when were these things put inside of these ideas given to you, where you learned that as a man, you had to be the provider and the supplier to bring bacon might be the bad word, but the food, because there's a lot of vegans out there, but putting the food on the table and being the supplier.
I think we don't live in a patriarch at home. With myself and my wife, we've always had sort of a 50-50 relationship, and we respect the amount of time that we spend at home. We respect the amount of time that we put work. And I think the big flip was when my income started decreasing, and so that relationship started becoming less, about 50-50, and it started scaling in that way. Growing up, both my parents were always employed, so they were both in the armed forces, and so I've never grown up with that sort of fixation of the man is always working and the woman is always at home. But I suppose when you for us, it was more about just the balance. We've always been very balanced at home. We've always respected each other in that way, and what I had to wake up to was the fact that things started shifting in that way, but it means that one of us pulls our weight from a financial point of view and the other one pulls our weight at home in that sort of way. So we're always a unit, but we're always fluctuating, and that was the realization for me.
I think that's beautiful. I think that you and your partner, you've got that wonderful balance. You work in the mental health realm. You're an ambassador for Mind. You've got Wellgood. You're an advocate for mental well-being. And I also know, you come from a sporting background, and we learn a lot of stuff in that team environment when we're younger. And these are the things that I try to talk to guys about, whether which is this overtly masculine, misogynistic almost, where because physically men are stronger and you can play rugby or ice hockey and you can bench press more, do more push-ups, then there's this kind of thing of that physicality means you're more powerful. And I think this is something that we're trying to just to talk about, that there is this need of balance in relationships. And I think that in doing so, we take the pressure off of a lot of men who have this kind of preconceived notion that a real man is stronger physically. So that means he's got to be responsible to be the provider. And that's kind of the things that I learned as in my early, mid and late teens, in those, by coaches and by teachers, that this is what a real man looks like. And I think that it's in these pressures that I'm sure you see, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the mental state. So yes, we can be physically stronger, but what's the mental state of the men that you work with and that you talk to, that are these strong pressures are put upon? And when this huge pandemic happens, when jobs and furlough are all being taken away, and that kind of essence of what it's like to be a man is taken away, and this kind of demasculation, it's such a topic that we need to talk about. And even like disclosing topics is even hard, and it's a subject that me and Melissa are actually trying to work on with an organization about these difficult to talk about topics. So can you kind of, the guys that you've talked to over the last few months, and from your sporting background, kind of we can kind of get into a conversation about these old things that we've learned, the pressures that it puts upon us, and then when these challenges happen, us not being able to have the mental capacity or connection or community to actually talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting, because I've really seen how things are changing, especially in recent times. even to a point where so I played community rugby. I was fortunate enough to play a high level of field hockey, so real hockey, Nick, not the stuff on ice. But yeah, very much it's that sort of you're a big burly guy. You're there, you bleed on the pitch, and then you laugh about it and drink about it, afterwards. And there's no real sort of connection around emotion around that, especially for myself, when I've gone through a series of quite bad injuries, which has meant that I'm not able to play sport, team sports anymore. And that initial crash that I had to go through from a mental health perspective of, one, feeling isolated, two, not having that sort of camaraderie around me, and three, having to deal with the fact that I'm not like my friends in that sort of way, where I can, Saturday morning, get up, get ready, go and, kick 2 lumps of whatever out of each other for a couple hours, and then have a great time with your friends after it until, say, 3 or 4 in the morning. And it was very much seen as, yeah, that's not going to happen anymore. And so with me, how I had to react to that was very quickly, and through the support of my network around me, especially my family, I was able to start empathizing with people a lot more, and gain that approach. I think it's becoming more and more present within, even from an elite perspective. So even last week, Joe Marler, who is an England rugby player, he represented England to the World Cup final last year. He's he's an incredible prop forward, so a big lump in that way. And he opened up about his depression last week online. Who's talking openly about it, and what he's been going through. And I do feel that it is shifting. That male sort of issue around, actually, we can't talk about our feelings because we're big burly guys. We're there to only just feel physical pain. We can't feel emotional pain. Actually, that's completely changing. And this even is seen with the businesses that I'm working with, that men are being more open about their own mental health with us now. That stigma is starting to release, and I feel that society will only benefit from it.
I agree, and I think it takes, and it is happening, where I think for the conversation to start, people who have been through some stuff, who've collected experiences through challenges, it could be the challenges that you've had, the challenges I've had, and then being in a place where they can share those experiences, show some vulnerability, and then in showing that vulnerability, creating some kind of trust and connection so that conversations happen. Because I think right now we're living in a world where there's so many topics to discuss, from Black Lives Matter and sexism and toxic masculinity and white privilege. And these are all topics that people can kind of go, ooh, I don't know if I want to discuss that, because for some reason, I suppose because it's associating blame. It's putting blame upon a system that was set up by a group of powerful men who look a certain way. And I think that that's why these topics are for, not for us to discuss because you and I do it, but for a lot of men have a hard time because they feel like it's that everyone's pointing the finger at them. And I think when people pointed their finger at me, Dan, I put my bristles up. I'm like, it's not, and you're not, and then the conversations change, they become more defensive. And I think when conversations become defensive, we're not open to changing our perspective.
Oh, definitely. And that's something which, I've gone through myself, through that journey of seeking help around my mental health. The blame was very much put on me, and I put up that defense like yourself, Nick. I was very much in self-doubt that there was any problem with me. But as soon as I started seeking that help, as soon as I started talking about it more than anything else, that's when the epiphany happened. That's when it's like, oh, that weight, that suit of armor that I've been wearing, that's been weighing me down, you know, chainmail in that sort of way, actually it's been lifted off. And now I can move around more freely, and I can talk openly about my feelings without really caring. And you know, I've been able to grow that resilience, and you know, through reflection on a daily basis, through, you know, trusting the people around me to be able to, you know, understand how I am. And I think those steps are really difficult, especially for men. And yeah, I think, you know, with those steps, as soon as you take that first one, then, you know, then that road, that journey, is it can be life-changing, or life-saving for that matter.
Yeah, for sure. Life saving, life changing, life evolving. And I think the one thing, as you were talking, you know, the one thing that kind of hit me is this kind of idea of the win at all cost mentality that that we kind of are taught again as youngsters with regards to sports, but academia, and then all of a sudden we get into the work environment, and it's like, I'm gonna win. You know, I've got to win. I've got to be the best salesman. I've got to be the best at all this stuff. And I think that, again, this kind of win it all mentality that we see in the sporting world, in the corporate world, is one that keeps us all bound and chained and like shackled. Is like, because how many winners can there be, Dan? Right?
Well, that's the thing. I have to stop myself quite regularly with that winner approach. So my eldest, he takes part in football on the weekends, and you know, he's part of a team, you know, and he knows the importance of winning. You know, he always wants to win, and at times I have to hold myself back, because, you know, that competitive person in me is like, yeah, you need to win. But in actual fact, as you know, it's always about the best team, rather than the best person that will always win. And by you being a collective and having, you know, really harmonious culture within that team, actually you gain a lot more success. And the best example that I give, and always have to, you know, really push into myself on a regular basis, when I see my son, you know, and he's getting frustrated because he's not winning, and he's not getting along with his teammates because of it, potentially. And what always comes to mind is Leicester City Football Club. Now, when they won the Premier League a few years ago, you know, you've got to remember the season before, they only just stopped themselves being relegated. And when they won the Premier League, no way did they have the best players in the league. No chance. You know, probably most teams have better players than them. But as a team, they were consistently the best. That's because they had that unit mentality. They were together. They had a culture of just going out and enjoying themselves, and you know, trusting each other in that way. And I think we can learn a lot from that, you know, in what we're doing. It's not about, you know, obviously we want to win, but it's not about the winning. You know, it's about coming together, being our best, trusting the person to our right and our left to be able to do their best as well. And by doing that, yeah, it's great. And that's very much a military thought as well.
And I love that thought, because it brings me to this. And I've been talking with Melissa, and Melissa and I are trying to work on some. We tend to not use the word workshop anymore, but a gathering, and a gathering topic on this idea of the. I was listening to a podcast, and there was a famous neurologist named I think it's Andrew Huberman, and he was discussing how the human brain, how they could measure when the certain state of the brain is in a, say, ecstasy or happiness or anger or sadness or challenge, which is where the brain is the happiest. And he says, rather than like in sex or eating or laughter, where you'd think that those would be like, which we love the most, right? Which feels the best. He said the brain feels the best and the body feels best when it's in a state of challenge, which means it's trying to figure something out. And you can see that, right? You can imagine in terms of evolution, we need to challenge ourselves to get the highest fruit, or, you know, get the biggest piece of meat, you know, the biggest animal, and how we could kill it. And it's always in the state of challenge so that we could be more productive. And it's really interesting that, you know, we've changed this kind of culture from challenge to competition. So as you say, like this win it all mentality in the changing room, rather than I had it when I played hockey, was, I would want to beat the guy who was my centerman in scoring the most goals. Like I'd want to, rather than us trying to collectively, get the most goals for the team. And it's really interesting. How can we kind of change this culture from one of competition in the sporting world and corporate world to one of challenge, where we can actually, like you said, well, as Leicester City did, which is we enhance ourselves as individuals, as a collective. What are your thoughts on this kind of idea of the movement from competition to one of challenge?
I think one of the big areas, and I've read a lot of books around leadership, and one of my favorite books that I've read around leadership is actually called Legacy. And what it does is it talks around why the All Blacks are the most successful sporting team of all time. And what it comes down to, one of the most important things, is that no one is too big to go and clean the sheds. And so at the end of every game, the most senior people, the most senior team members, they go and clean the sheds, so clean the change rooms, and sweep up after everyone, and it just shows that respect. And I think respect for not only your teammates but actually everyone around you, that's where it really comes down to. And once you identify that actually we're all on that pitch just to have fun, the other team, they're there to have fun. They're not there to get hurt or anything like that. They're not there to hurt you. But actually, collectively, we can all have fun. But if I'm leading and I know that my inside center or my fly half is leading as well, and we can just have fun, lead an example, and that is really, I think, a couple of areas that really will promote that next step for a lot of teams. It's like I walked past in the parks here on Saturday, and I saw there was a adult football team, and the players of one of them, it was obviously half time, they were screaming at each other, effing and blinding. I was like, why are they doing that? Why are they going out on a Saturday morning to go and just shout at each other and not enjoy? That's not right. You should always leave your shirt in a better place than when you found it, and that's not doing that. So yeah, I think respect not only for yourself but for everyone around you. You're not too good to go and sweep up at the end of the day. You're never too good to be able to take the water bottles on if you're injured. It is about that community and that culture and being together.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that there's a lot of unlearning because we see so much on TV. I've been here since 1989, and it was just the start of when Sky Sports got involved in football. And I can remember, I remember John Barnes. His kid used to ice skate at the rink that I used to work at, and I met his wife, and his wife was saying about how much money he was getting paid. And that, there's these, I think he was getting about £8,000 a week. And we were like, it was just such a huge amount of money, £8,000 a week. And then all of a sudden Sky Sports come in, and these, athletes who were not getting paid anywhere near what North American athletes were getting paid because of television over there. And then all of a sudden the North American model of TV comes to Britain. And then all of a sudden, the best player, John Barnes, making 8,000 to all of a sudden now, which we have average players, making 100,000 to 150,000 pounds a week, which is just, again, it's mind boggling. And I don't blame the athletes, Dan. It's not the athletes' problem but because I can imagine the athletes are not taught how to deal with 150,000 pounds a week, the pressures that goes along with that, and then all of a sudden the Instagram world, and these guys are elevated to a point where our brains just can't handle this stardom, and of course our egos are going to grow, and I think that this is the problem, is that these Sunday league football players are seeing these guys yell and scream at each other on the pitch, and they think they've got to emulate this. when really we're looking at a world where we just don't know what is real and what isn't.
Well,
But we're
exactly.
always, we're trying to emulate things that are not real. And I think, again, it's like a lot of unlearning and a lot of tender conversations that need to happen.
Definitely. And we come back to respect, and actually even on the weekend I saw as watching Match of the Day as I do, and one of the head coaches had a physical argument with the
Mm.
referee.
Yeah.
And if and they were debating on the show whether it was correct to send him off,
Mm.
to give the head coach a red card. Now, in rugby, even if you talk, slightly negatively to the referee, you will get disciplined for that, and not just by the referee, potentially by being sent off, but your club. There are rules around being a part of the rugby community. You have to respect one another, and if you're not leading by that example, then not only you but your club could be disciplined for it. And I think, as role models, footballers have got a lot on their plate, and you can't say that they all need to be driven at that certain level, because it's this unlearning that they need to go through. I see with, say, a lot of other sports is there is that grounding, there is that accessibility, and hence why there is a lot more respect, I feel, that comes out of it, and actually a lot less ponyism as well, where on a rugby pitch you won't see that. You will obviously see people who are passionate and want to get the result, but it's hardly as much as, say, for example, in football, where it can be quite a negative aspect. And I love football, but it's always an area that shades over it.
I know my sister's family is a rugby family, and the big, her husband is a big rugby guy too, but a lot of it was this culture is so different. And like, I know a little bit about it, but why do you think that rugby is so, right from the terraces to the pitch, behaviors are different, the culture just is different, and that's just learned, right? So where did that learning come in, you think, in rugby, and why does it separate itself from football?
I think it's more of an expectation, to be honest, Nick. It's funny because we joke about it, that you go and watch an elite level game, and you'll be sat next to the opposition in the terrace.
Yeah.
Like I've gone and watched a game at Gloucester, for example, and I'm a Wasps fan for my sins, and I've gone and stood in the shed, which is a standing area in Kingsholm Stadium, and the amount of friendly, and actually it's all not constructive, but it's abuse, but it's in a banter way that's thrown at you. But if you know that it's too much, then actually that is that respect there, and you'll buy each other drinks, and you'll laugh and you'll joke, and but you all want the same sort of finish. You want to win, but there is that togetherness and that expectation that bad behavior is not accepted. Whereas, historically, and you look back to the 80s and the 90s, hooliganism within football, people are segregated, as such, in the terraces. There very much is this tribal attitude. And I think for football to be able to move forward, I don't know. It's a very difficult one to be able to sort of comment on. But yeah, I see it more as an expectation within rugby rather than a learned behaviour. That if you behave badly, you're just not welcome.
I think that the football thing, to change, I think, again, it comes from the top, where just some referees need to like be bold and start, like, I know, in the 70s when Pele was playing, and he was getting hacked down. Same thing with George Best. They were getting hacked down, and people were like, we've got to protect these guys because they're going to get hurt. So, the red cards became more prevalent, and it was literally to protect the better players. And then that got used into, oh, if I fake getting hurt, a red card can come out and we can gain an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And this culture still exists now where guys are diving to try to get advantages. And I think that if they made that change to protect the players like Pele in the past, why can't they make that change now? And it takes at the beginning of a season, just a few bold referees to just start, if you're talking to me, boom, red card. And then how many red cards when a guy started lipping off till guys stopped lipping off?
Mm.
You know, it wouldn't take long
It's like
for it to stop.
You know, we see it in rugby after it restarted, you know, due to, you know, coronavirus. There was a change in the laws to be able to ensure that the game would stay quick. And so the breakdown, basically, it was a change of law over how the breakdown can be managed. And what we saw to begin with was there's loads of penalties being given away. And I'd say double the amount that we're used to. And there was a lot of frustration around it. But, you know, that only happened for a couple of weeks. And now everyone's become aware of it. And they know that if they go and make that negative behavior, then actually they'll get pinged for it. And so I think yeah, exactly that. If the expectations are set, follow through. And yeah, it's at the end of the day, we're all there. You know, those guys who play professional football, who are fortunate enough to be playing at that elite level, they didn't start to be professional footballers. They, you know, to be able to, they started because they loved kicking about a ball with their friends, you know, and it was a love of theirs that has actually been fortunate to become a career. And so it doesn't need to be this negative behavior around it. And you know, let's embrace positivity. Let's embrace better behavior on the pitch.
Yeah. And I think this is a great segue into the change of policy of how corporations, you know, how, you know, outside of the sporting world, how organizations now, because of, you know, Melissa and I had noted that a lot of corporate policies in companies before COVID were all boardroom driven to HR policies, then HR disseminates to employers. And so again, it's about, that's their policy. These small amounts of people in a boardroom, say 12 people in a boardroom, are dictating what's happening to these 1,000 employees via an HR hub. And what we've noticed is that, you know, we're working with a company with nearly 4,000 employees, and Melissa is kind of working with them to change their policy where these 4,000 employees can tell HR what they need from the work environment, and then tell boardroom. So it's kind of this reverse of policy, so that we can again work with organizations from the corporate world changing from one of competition to one of altruism, where your work environment is changing. And it's just like in football, you know, it's going to take the change of policies, you know, to make work environments more safe for people, because we are in the most uncertain work environment time I've ever experienced. I'm sure same with you. And it's uncertainty that we need to treat.
No, definitely. And very similarly, what we look at often is the cultural alignment between leadership and employees. And for those businesses that, you know, have a huge issue with mental health, you know, often there is no alignment between the leadership team and employees. And so, you know, by making businesses aware of that, you know, then they can make those steps towards, you know, being a more positive culture and supporting those, you know, specifically from our point of view, supporting those with their mental health when needed in that way.
Have you noticed a lot of change with the companies that you're working with over the last few months?
There's definitely been a focus on, there's definitely been some more focus on the mental health and, you know, of employees. I think because there aren't those water cooler moments that you'd be able to spot the signs of, you know, there's definitely been a more formalized approach to mental health. And for those businesses who aren't putting in policies and supporting their staff in that way, they're actually starting to see, you know, it's starting to creak. You know, they're really starting to see the strain in their teams. And, you know, unfortunately, if they don't make those necessary changes, there's going to be some big problems that actually come out for those businesses. But yeah.
What changes do they have to make?
So with what we do is what we look at policy change. We look at how employers can communicate better to their staff. And we look at preventing people from having from going into a mental health concern themselves. So it all comes down to communication. It all comes down to, you know, trust, responsibility, accountability, all these lovely buzzwords that I use regularly. But, you know, actually, you know, if leadership are really leading, then they should care about, you know, their staff and not treat them just like a commodity. Because if you enable your staff to fall in love with what they do, then you'll always get more out of them. So yeah.
I know that you were asked to speak at a big conference, right? Is it South by Southwest?
So we were asked to speak at South by this year.
Yeah.
But we obviously that was cancelled due to coronavirus. We are actually speaking at MAD Summit, which is a huge mental health summit next month, around mental health and what we're doing. Very much our proposition is asking the question, can tech save you from yourself? And because so much portrayal out there in the media that technology is actually such a negative aspect on people's mental health, which it is a big contributing factor. But if you morally and ethically use it in the right way, then it can be a real enhancement to people's lives, and you can actually benefit from it.
So I know you've got another chat coming up, which is kind of tech oriented. How do you see technology really being able to embrace you know, the challenges of uncertainty over the next 6 months to a year?
I'd say a big aspect of technology is that it allows us to behave faster, quicker, cheaper, and easier than before. So we can innovate all we want. We can do whatever behavior that we want. So it's essentially exactly the same as before, but what we're able to do is a lot easier and quicker. So we're allowed to make tasks a lot more autonomous, you know, and take a lot of the say hard work out of a lot of areas of work. But it's how that technology is used, and it's the ethical question around it. And at the moment, there's very little around standards for AI in particular, and regulation. And it's one thing that we hold dear to ourselves at Wellgood, is that actually we have our own standards. We know that trust is a really important factor to how we can help employees and help individuals, and actually help businesses as a byproduct. And so how we do that is not by deceiving individuals. It's not by you know, providing deception, you know, that whole side of stuff. What we need to do is be very accountable for what we're doing, very open and honest with people's data as well. So, but there needs to be regulation, in my opinion, around the morals and ethics around technology.
How do you yield, like, there's, like you say, there needs to be some regulation, but these big behemoths that are rolling and just kind of like, they're just devouring our data, but yet we still hang on to them, you know, for some reason. And I know I'm on it a lot, but you know, we're on it now. But you know, when, like, I don't know, Dan, like I want to try to take a break from it. I want to try to say, you know, but when is it a chemical thing that our brains need? And then when does it outweigh the balance of the benefits of it? You know, and how do we, like you say, how do we regulate it all? Like, what's the journey of all of this? Like, I know we're kind of running out of time, and that's a big question. But what kind of future do you see with regards to regulation, and especially, you know, how this stuff affects our brains and the youth today, and you know, all of the mental aspects that go with all of this technology?
I think, you know, without getting too technical and without, you know, writing War and Peace on it, I think we need to learn from the way that Silicon Valley has actually behaved badly. And, you know, moving forward, we need radically reimagined technology infrastructure and business models that actually align with humanity's best interests and not just the pockets of the few. And so, you know, we're seeing it in a lot of areas where we can, you know, where there is regulation, where there has been, you know, huge improvements in moral and ethical codes, you know, say regulatory around big oil or, you know, pharma, you know, all these areas. And actually there's a lot of incentives as well. So the B Corp movement, or even by being inspired by, you know, things like, you know, the WCAG around creating a more accessible internet. But what you're, you know, going back to, you know, the whole behemoth aspect of, say, tackling the Facebooks and the Googles, you know, as with the climate crisis, you know, we need to tackle that problem as a collective. And, you know, so do we need to really condemn those who pollute our behavior and rebel against them? And the follow-up question around that really is, if so, then how do we do that? And
Don't ask me.
I don't have that answer right now.
You know, I think the way to wrap this up is just around, like, I love you and what you stand for, which is just enabling safe spaces for people to be good, you know, for us to be able to help each other shine in our vulnerability, in creating trust, in saying that it's okay not to be okay. And then, like, hand in hand walking through this stuff together. I know you're all about community and connection, as we are, and I think that's why we're so aligned. And I know Melissa and I love what you do. So thank you for coming on, and
thank you.
Let's stay in touch. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon. But Dan, as always, it's a real pleasure to talk with you. And I'll let you run off because I know you got another chat to do.
Thank you, Nick. And yeah, all the best and much love.
All right, brother, you take it easy. And thanks everybody at the What's on an Elephant and Castle Facebook page. Don't forget that this Thursday at 11, it's going to be our end of a month gathering, which is going to be widening our circle of care. So hopefully we'll see you all then. Take it easy, folks. We'll see you later. Bye.